Hey, how's it going everyone? I'm Red, and if you haven't heard, Battlefield 2 Modern Combat is now playable online again once more for the PS2. This is possible thanks to the BF2 veterans community, and more specifically the hard work of a member named Omega, who painstakingly reverse engineered the game servers for the game. I'll leave a link down below in the description for their Discord if you'd like to join and connect with people who love this 18-year-old game. But what's the best way to play Battlefield 2 Modern Combat in 2023? That's a topic for hot debate. If you want my opinion, I have two answers. If you want the most authentic of the time experience, nothing beats playing on original hardware, which will work with these new servers. However, if you have rose-tinted goggles like I did, playing on original hardware is almost unplayable after being conditioned for so many years to the perks of modern gaming. Therefore, my preferred way to play is on PC via the PS2 emulator PCSX2 in hardware mode, which is what you see on screen now. There's some clear advantages. Obviously a much clearer image, higher resolution, we can upscale all the way to 4K if we want to, higher frame rate up to 50 FPS, and also lower PC specification requirements, so it's easier for your PC to run. Some disadvantages though, there can be some game state lag. I'll cover that more in a little bit. You are immune to flashbangs, which some may argue is not a disadvantage, but I like to go for replicating the gameplay. And some vehicle audio is also broken, but this is true for software mode as well in the emulator. However, due to various issues, setting this up to play perfectly from scratch can be pretty difficult, so I'm making this tutorial video and sharing my presets so that someone who's never touched an emulator before can get up, running, and playing in the best quality in a matter of minutes. This tutorial is going to cover a couple steps: PS2 Network Configuration, correct emulator version download, emulator configuration and modification, and some extra things like downloading cover art and Xbox controller button replacement. So if you're playing with an Xbox controller, you can actually have Xbox buttons on screen. This tutorial will not cover, however, acquiring a legal backup of your game or the PS2 BIOS, because there's already plenty of those tutorials on YouTube and on the web. However, they are required for this tutorial, so please obtain those first and then come back when you have them. I will say, however, if you do need a good application to back up your original disk, a lot of tutorials will tell you to go get freeware or software that's just littered with advertisements. I highly recommend grabbing this MPF tool. I'll leave a link for it down below in the description. It's actually used by game preservationists, and it's open source, it's simple, it doesn't have ads, it's free, and it's perfect for making a backup of your PS2 disks if you need to. I recommend getting the Net 48 one. The Net 6.0 ones are kind of in beta, so grab this one and refer to their documentation if you want to make a backup. Timestamps for all the parts of this tutorial will be down in the description as well, if you'd like to skip ahead if you've already done some of these steps, but I recommend watching everything if you can, because I may do some things differently than you're used to that may be required for everything to work properly. So with all that said, let's jump into it. So we're gonna need to download the PCSX2 emulator. We're actually gonna need two versions of this emulator to get things up and running. We need the latest version and then a specific old version. The latest version we're gonna use first to make the PS2 network configuration. For some reason, this process does not work on the older version, and then we're gonna use the older version to actually run the game online. This is because the latest version of the emulator does not play well with the online version of this game. So the second link in the description will be for the emulator and the releases tab here. Go ahead and just click whichever one's latest, and we're going to download the Windows 64-bit-QT. We're not the symbols one, just the QT one. And we're going to save it to, you can save it to your desktop, your documents, your downloads, wherever you want. I already have a folder here for the tutorial, so I'm going to save it there. Once it's downloaded, we're going to navigate to that folder, and we're going to need a program called 7-zip to unarchive it. So if you don't already have that program, go ahead and download it. And we're going to do extract to and then the name of the folder. Once that's done, we can delete the 7-zip file and then go into the folder and start the emulator. Now, if you already have the latest version of the emulator, you can skip this step, but if you're starting from scratch, we're going to have to do the setup wizard. So we're going to hit next. We have to choose where our BIOS file is, so I'm going to point it to there and select which BIOS you want to use. Next, we're going to point it to where our game backups are stored. My games are here. We're going to hit yes to scan recursively. That's fine. We'll hit next. Then it's going to ask you to set up your controller. I'm going to do automatic mapping to my SDL controller. We'll hit next, and then that's pretty much good. In here, we're going to find the Battlefield 2 game, and we're going to hit Properties. In here, we're going to go to Network. We're going to enable Ethernet. We're going to set the device type to sockets, and we're going to set the Ethernet device to whichever device or network device your computer uses. I just use Ethernet, but if you have Wi-Fi, that might look different, so select whichever one works for you. We're going to go ahead and close. Oh, also while you're in here, if you already have the emulator set up, just make sure that our aspect ratio is set to 4:3 and widescreen patches are disabled. This will break the network setup. Ideally, we should run it in software mode as well. So now we're good to start up the game, and we can use the key F4 to speed up past all the intro movies. We're going to go to Play Online. Now, once we get to this screen, make sure to press F4 again to stop it from fast forwarding. It will break the network setup if it's in fast forward mode. We're going to hit Create Edit. Yes, we want to create edit a network configuration. Wait for it to load. And here we're going to say Add a setting. We're going to choose the memory card we want to save it to. Now, if you already have a memory card, it won't ask you for this, but if this is your first time setting it up, we're going to say format the memory card. Yes, and then for pretty much every step of this guide, we're just going to hit OK and Next for pretty much everything. Auto, yes. But here, when it's asked about the DNS server, we're going to select Manual. And for the primary DNS, we're going to put in this address. I'm going to leave it in the description down below as well. It is 45. Now, this is a DNS server that is replicating the old GameSpy services that hosted the matchmaking for the games and the profiles. We're soon going to be switching over to our own DNS service, so this number will change in the future. You can find the correct number at the Veterans Discord, link down below. But for now, we're using a service called PS2online.com, and they are the ones who are hosting the DNS service for us. So we're going to hit OK and go Next, and it's going to ask to test the connection. We'll say yes. If you did everything correctly up until now, it should say success. If you don't get a success, either the number you typed in is wrong or the service is currently offline. The whole reason we're making our own service is their uptime has been kind of wavering. So again, go to the Discord for the most up-to-date DNS address. For the setting name, just for the sake of staying organized, I'm going to name it PS2 Online.com, because that's the people who are hosting it, but I would name this to whoever is the host for the OpenSpy service. And we'll hit OK. It'll save it. All right. So pretty much at this point, the network configuration is saved, and we can close this emulator. And that's all we need the latest version of the emulator for, but we still need some of its files, so don't delete it quite yet. Now we're going to download the older version of the emulator. I'm going to leave a link for this as well. It is specifically 3858. Now this is the latest version of the emulator that still works online without making manual patches to the emulator, which is why we're using this particular version. So on this screen, we're going to download the 64-bit AVX2-QT, again, not the symbols one, this one, and not the SSE4 one, specifically this one. So we're going to download this, and we're going to put it right next to where we have our latest emulator. Do not put it inside here. We want it next to it. So we're going to hit save. We're going to go back to our folder here, and we're going to do the same thing, 7-zip, extract to name of the emulator. Once that's done, we can delete the 7-zip. And then we're going to go back into the latest version of the emulator, and we're going to copy 2 folders. We're going to copy game settings and we're going to copy mem cards. Once you have these selected, you can select both of them by holding down Control and clicking both of them, then do Control C to copy. We're going to go back into the old version emulator folder and we're going to do Control V to paste. Next, we're going to get the specific game settings that work best for hardware mode. So down in the description, I will also link to this ini file. Hit download, and we're going to navigate to the old version of the emulator, then to game settings. Now, if this number does not match this number, that is okay. That just means you don't have the NTSC version of this game. It means you have a PAL version or some other version. That's okay. These settings will work for both, I believe. So what we're going to do to make sure everything is correct is you're just going to double click the file here. We're not going to hit save. We're going to double click the file. We're going to hit replace so that all my settings go to the right named file. Next, we're going to download, also in the description, this tfx.gsl. And that's going to go in the resources folder of the old emulator. And then in shaders, Vulkan. And it's going to replace this existing tfx.gsl file. The reason we do this is it's basically a very easy shader patch that fixes some explosions in the online version of the game. So we're going to double click that to replace it. At this point, you're safe to delete the newest version of the emulator if you want to, but if you want to keep it around for other games that work good on it, you can. That's plenty fine. But we're going to go to the old one and we're going to go ahead and boot it up. Now it's going to ask to update. We do not want to do that. We're going to hit skip this update. Then we're going to go to tools. We're going to check show advanced settings. It's going to warn you, just click yes. Then we're going to go to settings and then interface. In here, I recommend turning on start full screen, which just means the game will start full screen when you launch it. And we're going to uncheck enable automatic updates so it doesn't accidentally update to the latest version. Next, we're going to go to game list and we have to point it to where our games are again. Yes to search recursively. If it worked, it'll show the games. Then we're going to point it to where our BIOS is. Next, we're going to go to memory cards. We're going to uncheck port 2, and the memory card from the newer version of the emulator should already be loaded here. Once that's done, we can close this. Lastly, we're going to go to settings and then controllers. And we're going to go to controller port 1, automatic mapping, select your controller, and it should automatically map. If it doesn't automatically map or you don't see your controller in this list, you can manually map it here. Also, I'm personally using a PS4 controller. I like to go to settings and change the analog sensitivity to 1. For me, it makes it feel closer to the PS2 controller, but this is purely personal preference and you can decide if you want to do that or not. So once we're done with that, we can hit close. A little extra tidbit, this isn't required, but just if you want, we can get some really nice cover art for our games. So if you click this button here, it will put it into cover art mode. And then if we go to tools, cover downloader. Here, you can paste in, I'll leave it down in the description below, this particular link, and then you can check use serial file names, hit start, and it'll get some nice cover art for you if you want to do that. Also, as an extra tidbit, again, not required, but if you're playing with an Xbox controller, we can make the buttons in-game look like Xbox buttons instead of PS2 buttons. So if we go to the emulator folder here, and actually we'll have that ready, but in the description down below, I'll leave a link for this zip file. We'll hit download. We'll put it in textures. And we're going to do 7-zip, and then we're going to do extract here, not extract to name a folder. We're going to do extract here. We'll delete that. We're going to go back to the emulator. Now, one last final configuration. We're going to right click on the Battlefield game and we're going to hit properties. In here, we're going to go to graphics. Make sure the renderer is set to Vulkan if it isn't already, and set your adapter to your graphics card. If you're using the Xbox texture replacement, we can go to texture replacement and check on load textures. And then lastly, we're going to go to network, make sure the device type is sockets, and then set your Ethernet device again to whichever your network card is. All right, so if you've done all of that, you should be good to go. So we're going to double click the game. It'll start it up full screen. Now, if you see some warnings in the upper left, you can safely ignore those. Now, when you're actually looking to play online, I do not recommend using the F4 key to skip forward. The reason being is it'll put the emulator a couple milliseconds behind and give you some weird lagging issues online. Also, anytime you click out of the emulator and click on Discord or like if you have a multi-monitor setup and you click back and forth between the emulator, this can also introduce some lag online. So try to stay focused on the emulator as much as you can. One last thing, if you see this flickering on the right-hand side of your screen, that can be fixed. We can double-click this to put it in windowed mode. We can go to view and then game properties. If we go back to graphics and then display, the pixels are on the right hand side of the screen. I'm gonna adjust it to crop 1 pixel. So now if I make it full screen again, the flickering pixels go away. So if you're here and it's working, you can also see that the Xbox buttons down below are working as well. Then you should be good to go. We'll click on PS2 Online, and it'll request configuration and connection. Again, if the PS2 Online services are working, all of this should go flawlessly. And if you get data, oh yeah, that's fine. If you get the data not found, that just means you don't have an online profile. If you already have been playing online and you're looking just to do hardware mode, you can safely just copy your memory card over to this version of the emulator and your logon information will already be on this screen. If you don't already have an account, you can go ahead and click GameSpy Management and create a new ID. I'm not gonna go over that because it's pretty straightforward. Just follow the prompts. And yeah, that should get you up and running in hardware mode. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. If you have any questions, please leave them down in the description and I'll try to get to them when I have time. And I'll see you guys online.